Grisly Tales for Gruesome Kids, The Naughty Gnomes of No by Jamie Ricks. Today's story is called Lazy Bones. There is an ancient cemetery in Nakashone, Japan, which sits on the edge of a bleak cliff and overlooks the North Pacific Ocean. For years, the wind and waves have bitten chunks out of the cliff face until there is a little left to hold it up, and rocks tumble into the water like rolling dice. And the land recedes, the bones of the dead are discorded through cracks in the cliff face, with like white tapeworms falling out of an old cat's bottom. As a result of this, the Japanese Tourist Board has renamed the cliff Old Bone Shaker. I think Old Cat's Bottom would have been much better. In Wolverhampton, England, there lived a walrus of a womanette called Ida, aged 11, who wore elasticated trousers to allow her ever-expanding waistline to expand forever. Ida was acquired her talent for doing nothing in her mother's womb, where she got used to someone carrying her around and feeding her all day. My guess is that she got the taste for the easy life, and then hasn't judged her taste since, the doctor explained to Ida's worn-out parents, Mr. and Mrs. Lydon, who were taking their daughter in for a checkup prior to taking part in the charity walk at school. "I'm impressed," said Mrs. Lydon. "How can you tell?" "By the fact that she isn't there for her checkup," said the doctor. "She refused to come," exclaimed Mr. Lydon. "Said it was too much effort getting off the sofa." "So we've came instead," exclaimed his wife. "Do you do everything for her?" asked the doctor, with a hint of recrimination. "Absolutely not," snapped Mrs. Lydon. "We're not her slaves, you know. Apart from washing, eating, dressing, doing her homework, reading, walking, running, tying her shoelaces, cycling, going to the loo, shopping, skipping, sneezing, cooking, brushing her teeth, swimming, waving, singing, painting, blinking, blowing her nose, chatting, stroking kittens, switching on the TV set. She does everything for herself. That just leaves slipping," said the doctor. Mr. Lydon beamed with pride. "Oh yes, he said, she's good at that." Ida had to have a medical checkup before entering the charity walk. On the instance of the school, if you think it's best, headmaster," Mrs. Lydon said in his study. Do I? He said. "Ida is a lovely girl, or so I'm told. I've never actually met her." "She doesn't like school," said Mrs. Lydon. "I've noticed." "So she doesn't come in. It's not the teachers or the lessons, it's just the getting up and getting in that defeats her." "She did come in once," corrected Mr. Lydon, "but the school lost her. Nobody knew where she was, and the police had to be called in. They found her fast asleep on her own coat hook." "Oh yes," murmured the headmaster. "Too lazy to take off her coat, I remember. Anyway, back to the charity walk. As I said, Ida's a lovely girl, so I hope you understand. It's nothing personal. It's just that, with younger pupils taking part, and with the tendency to get upset at the slightest thing, I really don't think it would be a good idea if Ida died on the course." "Do you think she might?" asked Mrs. Lydon. "She will, if that hedgehog does its job properly." Well, she hasn't moved since the day she was born, has she? Apart from that day on the coat hook, corrected Mr. Lydon. Apart from that day, yes. So her heart's going to be a little unused to exercise. Ironically, the charity walk was in aid of LARD, the charity for large and reclining daughters. And for obvious reasons, Mr. and Mrs. Lydon were keen for their daughter to take part. Everyone knew that a child who was a lazybones lived less long than a child who was active. And Mr. and Mrs. Lydon did not want to see Ida pop her clogs permanently for want of some exercise. Convincing Ida of this, however, was quite a different matter. She was the laziest of lazybones and had lived on the sofa ever since moving out of her cot. Aged 2.5, by the time she was 3, she had organised her life so that everything came to her and nothing had to be fetched. Not by her, at any rate. If she needed something urgently, she would pull the bell cord next to the sofa, which would ring a bell in the kitchen and summon her servants. I think that should read parents. Her father took his city and guilds in carpentry and built hundreds of labour-saving devices to keep his daughter in luxury, to which she quickly became accustomed. There was a secret potty pit which used the very latest in dung beetle technology. Then there was the dry bath, which incorporated several inventions in one. A trawler's winch to raise Ida off the sofa by 6 millimeters, so the plastic sheet could be slid between her and the cushions. A clothes vacuum to suck the clothes off her body. A dry foam spray purchased from a car accessory shop to cover her skin. A spinning sponge to foam her up. And a camois lever stretched across a photo frame and driven by the motor from an old electric typewriter to buff her down. A towel on an owl, which sounds quite cruel, but was nothing more than a trained owl secured to a fixed length of wood via a neck collar, and encouraged by movement of a mechanical mouse on rails to fly in circles until the towel it was holding in its claws had touched Ida's body enough times to dry her off. And last but not least, a clothes blower to reverse the sucking procedure and blow the clothes back onto her body. While she was still young, she also built a nappy changer, a snot extractor, a tummy tickler, and a scream abater, which was basically a cork which anyone could shove in her gob when her screaming exceeded a 7 decibel their hold. As she became more independent, Mr. Lydon constructed an all-day drink dispenser, which was a length of a plastic hose that ran from Ida's mouth to a bottle of lemonade in the fridge, and a mobile feeder, which was a conveyor belt on wheels. It could be used to deliver home-cooked food from the kitchen to the sofa, or, if extended from the letterbox in the front door to Ida's lap in the event of both parents being unavailable, to run errands for their daughter at the same time. This conveyor belt could be used to post takeaway pizzas directly into Ida's stomach. Obviously, they had to be thin crust to fit through the letterbox, but Ida quite liked thin crust, so that was never an issue. Then, one day, Mr. and Mrs. Lydon woke up and realised they were killing Ida, or rather, Ida was killing herself, and they were letting her do it. "We've got to put a stop to her laziness," said Mr. Lydon. "It's funny you should say that," said Mrs. Lydon, who was sitting up in bed next to him reading a copy of the Daily Ogre. "But there's an article in here you should read. Page 13. The article was headlined, 'Answer to Britain's Obesity Crisis.' Next to the copy was an artist's impression of a freakishly large human skeleton, and the caption, 'This is what it looks like.'" There's a saying, read Mr. Lydon. "The lazy people have lazy bones. Get rid of the bones and the laziness will disappear too. I've never heard that before." Read on," said his wife. "Or so says the Bone Shaker, the latest demonic craze to come out of Japan. Born on a beach and built from old bones discarded by a graveyard." Mr. Lydon suddenly went quiet and looked up from the paper. "The Bone Shaker fillets lazy children." "With his finger," confirmed his wife. "It's quite quick and painless. Apparently a bit like going for a tummy tuck." Mr. Lydon was suddenly infused with energy. "We should meet him. Do they give a phone number?" No phone number, no address, and nobody's ever seen him," she said, throwing back the duvet and stepping out of bed. "He hates public appearances and refuses to perform his surgery in front of parents because they are notoriously squeamish and forever fainting." "Well, I'm going to write to him anyway," he said. "Care of the Daily Ogre. I'm going to ask this Bone Shaker chap if he'd like to pay Ida a little visit." Then he scribbled a quick note, sealed it in an envelope, and ran to the post box in his pyjamas. He was wearing his pyjamas when he ran to the post box. There wasn't a post box in his pyjamas, obviously. That wouldn't work. You'd never get a wink of sleep with postman trying to empty it all night. On his return, Mr. Lydon marched into the sitting room and declared loudly, "Ida, today is the start of the rest of your life." "Bug off," came the answer from underneath the mound of pillows. "I'm not open for business today." "That's too bad," he said breezingly, "because you're getting off that sofa and starting to get fit." He bent down, slid his fingers underneath the base of the sofa, and lifted, and kept lifting until the sofa was upside down. He was puzzled, however, that he hadn't heard Ida drop to the floor. "You have to do better than that," snorted his daughter, who was clinging on to the underside of the cushions like a cat with sharp claws. "I knew you'd try this one day, so I've been growing my fingernails in readiness." Mr. Lydon rightened the sofa and left the room, cursing quietly under his breath. Getting Ida off the sofa was going to be tougher than he had thought. A few minutes later, he reappeared with Mrs. Lydon and a shoebox, leaning casually against the door frame. Mrs. Lydon said, "Ida, your father and I have a surprise for you." "What is it?" yawned the couch potato as she flicked listlessly between adverts. "Can't you see I'm busy watching telly?" "We brought you some pets," announced her father. Ida sat up. "Show me," she squealed excitedly. "Show me my pets. I want to see my pets." "Ah, there's a teeny tiny problem with that," laughed Mr. Lydon, tiptoeing carefully towards the clever part of their plan. "Because you have to get off the sofa and walk outside to see them." "Oh, I get it," she said, her face hardening with betrayal. It's another trick to get me off on my feet. Not at all, smiled her mother. They're outdoor pets. Like raccoons? She asked. She'd just seen a wildlife program about raccoons and thought they looked rather cuddly. Not raccoons, no, but they do live in the garden. We brought a couple in to show you. They took off the lid and shoved the shoebox under Ida's nose. Are you mad? She howled. Do you honestly expect me to get off the sofa to look after bees? I think they're rather sweet, said Mrs. Lydon. Well, I don't, glowered her lazy daughter. What if one of them stung me? I should be forced to scream and leap and in the air like a stupid ballerina. Think of all the energy I'd waste doing that. So, the looking after bees in the garden to get Ida outdoors idea was abandoned. But not before Ida had grown rather fond of the two in the box and trained them to eat the earwax out of her ears and lower her eyelids whenever she needed to sleep. Good night, Beeve. Wake me up when it's deal or no deal. And off she slipped into dreamland. Imagining a world where insects were trained to look after her every need. Ticks ticking her homework, crickets teaching her cricket, and flies opening and closing her flies. Deathwatch beetle watching her death. It was during one such sleep that Mr. and Mrs. Lydon decided that sport was the answer to getting their daughter fit. But everything they tried was met with complaint. Playing drafts made her arms ache, tiddlywinks was too noisy, and cards were too heavy. In fact, the only sport that interested her at all was hide and seek, which she played by herself using a mirror and the natural reflex known as blinking. Now I see you, now I don't. 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 When Mr. and Mrs. Lydon saw the posters for the sponsored walk, their spirits rose. Here was an activity that Ida could do with her friends and required nothing more than walking. Why they thought she would go for it is still a mystery. But they did. They spent the next week encouraging her to get up and try her legs. But the lazy girl stayed put. They went to see the headmaster and the doctor on her behalf, because they thought it would shame her into getting up. But no such luck. Ida was not moving and nothing her parents said made a blind bit of difference. No, 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 no. No to everything you want me to do, she screamed. It's my life. I can live it how I like, and I like it right here on the sofa. Just then, as the first tears rolled from the corners of her parents' eyes, the letterbox clapped. It sounded like a bone breaking. The postcard was postmarked Nagashoni, Japan, and was written in Japanese. You can only read it because I got a Japanese snapping turtle who works as a croupler in the casino to translate it for you. He plays snap with our guests and bites their heads off if they win. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Lydon, bones of Nagashoni, everlasting skeleton, hankering after kid, exacting revenge. He replied, said a startled Mr. Lydon. I wonder when he's coming. He doesn't mention a time. Maybe he doesn't make appointments, said Mrs. Lydon. He sounds as if he likes to do things differently. Oh, yes. Doing things differently is exactly what the Bone Shaker liked. The following day, Ida's parents went off to school to watch the sponsored walk and make excuses for their daughter's absence. Ida never minded being in the house on her own. It meant she could watch whatever she wanted on the telly without someone telling her she was lazy. Just before midday, as the bees closed Ida's eyes and the neighborhood dogs howled as if the world had come to an end, the soil in the back garden shifted. Loose dirt on the surface of the flower beds trembled and jumped like dry peas on a timpani drum. Then, suddenly, the lawn split open, as if two invisible hands had burst up from hell and pushed the grass apart. A yellow cloud of hot sulphur wafted out of the hole, followed by a single bone. It popped out like a piece of gristle expelled from a choking throat. Seconds later, the grass was covered in bones as the earth gave them up with a roar and a gasp. There were 560 in all. 300 more then is needed to form a human skeleton. Ida was asleep when the beastly skeleton clattered into the room, standing 8 feet tall in its bare feet. Its hollow eyes are lightened on the lazy lump on the sofa. It picked her up as she weighed no more than a cabbage, then turned her upside down to shake her. "What's going on?" screamed the girl, waking suddenly from her dream. "Quiet!" growled the demon. "I'm listening." "Who are you?" She spluttered as the Bone Shaker shook her by her rib cage and turned her through 360 degrees to listen to the bones in her hips and feet. They rattled like a wooden coat hangers in an empty wardrobe. "Lazy bones," he said once. Then again, "Lazy bones. I can hear them," being separated from her sofa. Being separated from her sofa was a new experience for Ida. They had not spent 5 minutes apart since she was 3 years old. She panicked and screamed. Acidic waters rose in her throat. Her head throbbed and her chest thumped. "That's your heart," cackled the Bone Shaker, seemingly able to read Ida's mind. "You have never heard it beat before, because you've never taken exercise before, or ever been so scared." "I'm not scared," she protested, wriggling to free her legs. But the Bone Shaker had hands like an eagle's claw and was not letting go. "Maybe not now, but you will be," he whispered, flipping her around to face her. "Maybe you're not scared now, but you will be." And with that, he opened his mouth and breathed into Ida's face. A hot, wet, noxious breath of sulphur and dead meat had made her flop in his bony arms. He dropped her on the floor and leant her body over her body like a surgeon. Then, using a producing bone in his right index finger, he drew a line across her solar plexus from one side of her body to the other. He sang quietly to himself as he split her open like a ripe watermelon. "Or the head bones are not connected to the neck bone. The neck bones are not connected to the chest bone." He picked her up and, standing behind her, wrapped both arms around her waist. He tugged sharply with an upward movement of his shoulders, and the bones from the top of her body shot out like a carpet. "Oh, your chest bones not connected to your hip bone, because they're all on the floor." Then he span her around and repeated the procedure from the other end, relieving the lazy girl of the lazy bones in her legs. When Mr. and Mrs. Lydon returned from the sponsored walk, they found their filleted daughter in a state of skeletal collapse, lying like a deflated parachute on the floor of the sitting room. Next to the skin, where her head used to be, was another postcard. "Jolly old bones. Do ordinary knobs effect?" Or, if you abbreviate all the beginning letters of what I just read, "job done." They did not understand the note when they found it, and they still do not understand it today. It was enough, however, that their daughter was still alive. They folded her into a carrier bag and took her down to the local garage, where, using the tyre inflator, they pumped her full of air. "Look, Mummy!" shouted the child as Ida floated above the car on the way home. "It's Balloon Girl!" If you're wondering what that last postcard meant, it's what the Bone Shaker does with all them bones he collects. He's a whittler, and knobs is toggles. He carves the bones into those toggles that you find on duffel coats. What Royal Navy captains wear, so I am wearing Ida's bones right now. Night, night, Porter. I need pumping up. I've got a punch. Ah! Whoops. You know what's happened there, don't you? That hedgehog I gave her as a pet has just burst her bubble.